I was hoping the rest were like we're in a small district. So what?
Okay, fair share back
Rather than last night, was really curious what are they trying to
Rob called me Friday. I was in Texas on Friday.
February 2nd, 2020.
Yeah, we had a.
And it went to public.
Yeah,
I got it. There's a lot of that's just if we don't have any.
No, we had one person and I went to visit with them and said, you need one more delay. The next time this goes.
They're going through each bullet. And the bullet is what the request is. Below it is the response from the attorney. How could we
So for higher success.
What do you pay ASA?
I didn't see that one coming.
Almost afternoon.
I know it.
Right?
Yeah, but I
think we're going to get started. If you guys want to grab a seat and come up from the back. Maybe I don't have to use the microphone.
If you don't mind, it sounds better. It sounds better for people watching.
So good afternoon, almost afternoon. I'm Christy Sandvik, Superintendent of Buckeye Elementary School District and the President of ASA Superintendent Division. So thanks for your prompt attention. Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone that we are recording and it's live streamed, so professional demeanor is always appreciated, just in case when we start talking about the legislature, we just want to make sure that we keep our comments professional. So we're going to invite Mark and Rebecca back up to review the legislative bills in a little more detail and review questions that anyone might have. I think they're here. So if you guys want to come back up and review again for us, we appreciate that.
Oh.
Superintendents, we gave you a more thorough discussion of all the bills to the whole group than we typically do. If there's questions on those individual bills, we can put the presentation back up if we can find it and talk about any one of those, or you can just ask us questions, or we'd be happy just to sit down. You can go on your next agenda item, whatever you want to do. We're at your disposal.
But on the last slide, which I didn't go over, the ones that you're in support of, so we can make sure and get those in.
Yeah, and all of these are in the, I don't know how to work PowerPoint.
Oh, they're on the YouTube page.
While they're doing that, let's just do quick introductions. Name and where you're from and anything else you want to share.
Jeff Greenwich, Hayden Winkleman, Unified School District.
Sherry Garcia Miami.
Stephen Sanico, Superior.
Mark Bidman with Fort Huachuca Accommodations.
Robert DeVere, Tombstone Unified.
Lauren Knowles, Somerton School District.
Good morning, Pete Lesser. I'm the interim superintendent for Mesa Public Schools. So I'd like to welcome you all here this morning. Thanks for your time today, and I appreciate the conversation that's taking place. I was hired back on the second reported work on December 3rd, and so I've been here for about 8 weeks. I've had conversation with some of you around here over the course of the last 8 weeks, so I absolutely appreciate the collegiality, the conversation. We're working hard at Mesa Public to do great things like all of you as well. So welcome to Mesa Public Schools and our meeting this morning.
I'm Dennis Goodwin, Murphy Elementary School District.
Good morning, Debbie Burdick, Cave Creek Unified.
Good morning, David, San Luis Valley, Rio Rico.
Good morning, Nora Gutierrez, Towson Union High School District. Good morning, Heather Cruz, formerly Department Ed, Education.
Alston, Washington Elementary.
Sheila Harrison Williams, Executive Director of the Arizona School Boards Association. Good morning, Jennifer Johnson, GCU.
Morning, Roger Freeman, Littleton.
Good morning, Quinn Callis, and Dyser.
Howard Carlson, Wickenburg. Steve Beebe, Casa Grande Union High School District.
Dan Streeter, Humboldt Unified.
Tracy Logan, Maricopa Unified.
Bill Johnson, Levine.
Donna Lewis, Creighton.
Brian Capistrand, Glendale Union.
Eric Godfrey, Buckeye Union.
Jerry Jennings, Globe.
Kurt Finch, Deer Valley. Arthur, buddy.
Greg Donovan, West Mac.
Thanks, Greg. So one thing I did want to mention is thank you to members of the legislative committee, and I just saw Lupita to come in. So real quick, Lupita.
Towson Elementary, Lupita Hightower.
Thanks, Lupita. Did everybody get a chance to introduce themselves? Forget anyone? I want to just say thank you to those of you who are members of the legislative committee for all your work on the bills, but also thank you to everyone that works behind the scenes, because we know you all do that with all of your legislatures, both Republican and Democratic. We know you all work behind the scenes to provide both political and other information. We know you all do that. So thank you very much for that hard work. So I'm going to take the opportunity to also thank both of you for all your hard work and turn it back over to you guys for question and answer.
So I can go over this slide that we skipped over because we were running out of time before. So this is a list of bills that are still moving that ASA supports. This is in the packet that I sent out to the legislative committee. I think it was 10 days ago because it was the deadline for education committee. 2105 came from Washington Elementary. Representative Udall is really interested in encouraging school districts to run daycares for their teachers. And this just basically what the language says is it's not a gift of public funds for a district to offer a reduced rate to its employees in a daycare. There were some concerns about that from some school administrators. College course credit dual enrollment. This is the bill that requires one Carnegie unit to be awarded for a dual enrollment class instead of half a Carnegie unit, right? Yeah. We've just been supporting that one. I don't know, I think a couple superintendents work behind the scenes on that one. 2110 is the State Board of Education's bill that they have come and present to us before and that we have been involved in since last summer. The intent of this bill is for the state board to be able to discipline non-certificated employees in a school. So non-certificated teachers and, classroom aides, et cetera, they would all be subject to discipline action and investigative authority by the state board, which they currently aren't. They're running into issues with that. Bus drivers and food service workers are exempt from this, but pretty much all other employees could be investigated and disciplined. And the way they are going to track this is it will be tied to a number on their fingerprint clearance card that they all currently have. You can lose your certificate from the state board, but maintain your fingerprint clearance card. If it's not adjudicated in a court, which is a little bit scary. And we saw some examples in the news of people who lost their certificate, but maintained a fingerprint clearance card and were still able to work with kids. So any disciplinary action on a certificated or non-certificated would ding the fingerprint clearance card. So another entity hiring, whether it's a daycare or a charter school, would see that disciplinary action. Yes.
The feedback that I've received over the course of the years is that there's such a large caseload of investigations. Has there been conversation about, are they hiring additional investigators?
Yeah, so it is in the Department of Education's budget request to the governor to be able to hire, I think it was 7 FTE there was a major backlog for several years. They've been able to tackle most of the backlog. The Department of Ed's budget request, according to what Callie said, is in the budget that the legislature is considering. So that is a topic of discussion, and they have been seeking additional funds to hire more investigators. They did want to remove the provision that requires them to investigate and potentially take action on a teacher who breaks their contract. They said that was clogging up their investigative unit. We opposed that pretty significantly, and they took that out of their bill as a favor to us. And so that was, that was very nice of them to concede that. So the rest of the bill we have been supporting through the legislative process.
That recruiting includes certificated and non-certificated charters.
Yeah.
Anybody who is paid by a charter has to have a fingerprint.
They will now, except for a bus driver. But we had some legislators who wanted to include bus drivers in this, and Ketcher was able to talk to the legislators about the background checks that they already go through at DPS to drive a bus and how there's cameras on most buses. Those are the 2 employees that would be exempt. 2111, I can't even read numbers anymore. This school resources services consolidation grants is from UDOL. It appropriates $10 million to the Department of Ed to run a pilot program with county school superintendents so they can do more shared resources, which a lot of the smaller counties are already doing now. I know Yavapai does a lot, Pinal does a lot. So she came up with that to try and appease Representative Fillmore's desire to consolidate all the districts in Arizona. So she tried to go down the path of consolidating resources, and some of the county school superintendents said the startup cost to do some of this is prohibitive. So she came up with this appropriation for this pilot program. So we've been supporting that for her. Callie touched on HCR 2001 to repeal the English language only requirement. Representative Fillmore, it's my understanding, wants to trade this for consolidation. He's very into consolidation. So that's what's holding it up. Yeah. What's funny is ATRA will say things like that in consolidation meetings, which is really helpful to us. Why are you trying to consolidate districts when charters can open up anywhere? That's really helpful to have ATRA repeating that message. And then we have the CTED 4th year funding bill. I spelled year wrong. That is going to the floor today. And then Senate Bill 1234 is the additional assistance restoration, the accelerated restoration. And that is moving through the process as well and will be in the budget. That's what we've been told.
I just feel compelled. 4th year funding for CTEDs is a really big deal for all of us in the CTED business, but it isn't quite exactly what it says. In 2012, the legislature took away all funding for 9th grade CTE courses. Since then, we've been trying to work our way back into that. This bill would allow for funding for a 4th year, either grades 9 or 13. Because some of the students don't wake up in time to finish a program, and those coming to a central campus could roll into a 13th year and we would still get our funding. But this is limited to the 5 highest occupational demand areas as identified by the Arizona Commerce Authority and the Arizona Department of Education. So this is not a carte blanche. We get all our 4th year funding back. It is a very limited. Second, 9th graders wouldn't receive any funding until the 40th day of the 2nd year of persistence of the same course. The Department of Ed currently has no way to ever do that. So there, sounds good, We're all for it, we want it, but there are some glitches, and it's not as big a deal as it sounds like on the surface. Thank you.
No, thank you for that clarification and that reminder to the group. I appreciate it.
And this affects 105 school districts that belong to CTEDs.
We've been following the lead of the CTED liaisons down at the Capitol, and so I know that it's definitely far from perfect. So thank you for the clarification.
It's currently a $7 million item, is what JLBC said the cost.
Could you come back and take a stab at it next year, Frank, if this goes in?
Yeah, the question, can we take another, certainly, we see it as getting into the 10th, absolutely, but that's where it's at today. And some of the usual folks, Kavanaugh and Bowers, and some of them kind of keep, well, ninth graders are too young, they don't know what they're doing, this is just a money grab, that kind of stuff. So they need to be consistent, they need to continue on. We can say, okay, a lot of them will, and we're okay with that. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like that's it. That was it. That was the only slide.
A quick question for you. Not a question, just a statement. We talked earlier about you emailing us talking points with on different ideas. Since there's so many of them, I just want to remind you that only use this when you need us. Don't do a ton of work if you know it's not going to make it. Just pick the ones that are hot that you need us. And then that takes the burden off us, takes the burden off you.
I appreciate that, and I think it makes it more meaningful when legislators hear from you sparingly. So.
Well, if you do want to keep your finger on the pulse, because it could slip in and become a trade-off, so I appreciate that. So work versus awareness, I agree totally.
Yeah.
Okay, can we just hit Senate Bill 1503? I just want to make sure that one is still moving forward.
Yes, it is.
But with the amendment that personal devices can be used.
Yes, personal devices, that was his intent, but the language didn't quite work that way. So the intent is, and what the bill does is it says teachers cannot communicate with students on electronic devices unless they're using a district approved technology platform.
So I believe in the original one, they had also mentioned parents in there, students and parents.
Yes.
Did the amendment strike the parents, or did it?
No, so the amendment still includes volunteers acting in the capacity of an employee, which we're not entirely sure what it means. And when this goes, I tried really hard to get, it includes volunteers acting in the capacity of an employer. And so we were able to amend in that chaperones were exempt if they have a, signed permission slip, which I looked at a lot of governing board documents, and it looks like a lot of you, there's a form, I think, created by ASBA where you have the parent sign and you give the phone number, like you give permission that your child may be hearing from this cell phone number about these things, for drama club or coaching football. But it does include volunteers. So we got the field trip amendment in it, but it also includes social relationships. And I tried really hard to get that out, especially in smaller communities. People are related, people are friends. I know my sister's kid is best friends with another kid whose mom is a teacher, and people don't have landlines anymore, and they text each other through their mom's cell phones, all this stuff we were concerned about. So I tried really hard to get social relationships out of there. Senator Boyer would not budge on that. He said that's typically where the grooming occurs. And I said, unfortunately that's true, but that will occur if the social relationship exists outside of school and was created outside of school, then it shouldn't be the school's responsibility to track all those social relationships. So when that has not passed the Senate yet, when it passes the Senate and gets to the House, we will bring up that social relationship issue again in committee. A lot of legislators and AEA still have some concerns about the ramifications of the law, because you're now making something illegal that schools are really already prohibiting and trying really hard to stop from happening. So does that answer? That was a long answer, but does that?
There was also, I thought, a section saying you couldn't communicate with parents or students on any type of platform that was not owned by the.
Yeah, I think it just applies to students, but it could be parents. But I know the ASBA model policy says students and parents. Okay. So that's where I got some pushback. The staffer had the ASBA model policy printed out and said, well, you're already prohibited, which I think it's a great policy. I think the policy takes care of everything.
Well, some schools failed to adopt that ASBA policy because it said students and parents.
Okay, that's good to know.
Or modified it because.
Yeah.
Just one thing that we did that we stole from somewhere else. We just make sure that they include another adult in that loop. Because if you have a freshman team, a JV team, and a coach is communicating with individual players, we're saying no. You just have to, if you're going to communicate with a player or a group of players, you have to CC your supervisor or another adult. That helped a ton.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. I've heard that from other superintendents. So now under the bill, what you would be required to do is what some districts are already doing, which is getting that permission form where you would put the coach's cell phone number, the parent signs it, and it specifies like you're okaying your child to receive messages from this number related to football games, etc. I mean, you can sit down and think of a million examples that would make this bill problematic, and we went through all of those with Senator Boyer and his staff, but he wasn't super amenable. But he might be when he starts having trouble getting votes, which I think might happen, because AEA is concerned about some of this too.
So you said illegal. That means they're, I mean, are they subject to discipline by us or by the state board, or is there actually a criminal code?
So it says that the district has to adopt disciplinary policies for people who break this law.
It would be illegal for us not to adopt.
You have to adopt them, yeah. But district discipline, so she was telling me, that could be a warning, a letter of censure from the district, but then it also requires the state board to adopt regulations on how to provide guidance. I know it's a very convoluted bill. And to provide guidance on when they would have to actually, what the difference is between inappropriate, like you shouldn't text about homework, and what is potentially criminal, grooming over texting, so.
Does that not fall under unprofessional conduct?
I brought the state board statute on unprofessional conduct and tried to make that argument that this is already unprofessional conduct. I was told it'll be stronger as a state law.
Which one is this?
1503.
Rebecca, this doesn't apply to written communications on paper.
No, just electronic.
So a coach could send countless communiques by paper and still be okay.
Yeah, I mean, it could still be unprofessional conduct if it's,
Right, but
yeah.
if it's during school day and the game is canceled or not, or they need to say meet it here, and we could push those out without having to use it.
Yeah, well, so what she's trying to say is anything that's district approved is allowed. So you could still communicate on a text if you have those permission slips. You could do it over email if it's the district email, because that's a school platform. You could do it on the school's Facebook page, so long as it's not the teacher's personal Facebook page.
And right now, the parents' waiver doesn't allow us to use student personal cell phones. Send messages from the coach to a cell phone. The parent can't opt out of that and allow the coach to communicate with their child.
Well, wouldn't that be district approved?
I guess I'm not understanding the question.
So right now, the bill would say that no communication via personal contact on a student's cell phone. Right?
Yes, but it says that volunteers or staff participating in extracurriculars can get a signed permission form.
But can a coach get a waiver from a parent on this that would allow the coach to send direct communication to students?
Am I misunderstanding?
But I don't be.
Oh, they got four.
Yeah, that's what I just said. The volunteers will get a permission
But he's
form.
not a registered coach, he's not volunteering.
But it's somebody participating in extracurricular. Under the bill? The intent was for that to be allowed under the bill. So I'll have to talk to staff again to figure out. I was under the impression this was already happening. That there was a form, I've seen the form that, yeah.
I'm just reading the bill that eliminates that.
Oh, okay. It's not supposed to. It's not supposed to. And that's why I was frustrated. Part of the bill addresses specifically volunteers on a field trip, because I used that example, and It's not supposed to prevent that, but I will go back and look. And I assume this gets another amendment in the House, so.
And this seems just to make this a whole lot more convoluted than it ever has been.
Oh, I know. We sat down
If
with.
it keeps going, I would say you need to attach a fiscal note just for the staff time and effort, just to ensure compliance with this.
Yeah, we sat down with Mr. Boyer, with his staff several times.
That would be
We
my next
tried.
thing with him.
We tried very hard.
Thank you, as usual. You guys are very thorough. And on that note, we could go on all day. So a little bit of work to do on that last one, but just to kind of move us along, I know almost everybody, at least in Maricopa County, maybe not in Pima County, but I know a lot of us
all over the state.
Did we? Okay. Well, so anyway, we had a records request that that generated quite a few questions for us on how to respond. So let's make sure everyone has the AZ Central document that was handed out at the beginning of the meeting. And Mark's going to review with you some responses from conversations with council. So here you go.
Can I speak without the microphone?
Yes.
Using my playground voice? Honed after years on playgrounds? Okay, so a couple things here. This request went out according to, I met with Lily for an hour on Friday, Lily Altavina. And I also had conversations with 3 different law firms, a couple other lawyers. So I've quoted from some of them in here, but I'm quoting without attribution. So, you know, they're not playing lawyers on TV. They're not staying at the Holiday Inn. But this is guidance. Again, you should consult your own lawyers as well. But this is kind of a compilation of advice here as well. This went to every district in the state, and charters. Okay, so let me just walk you through it a little bit here. And here's this first paragraph, the statement of basic parameters from an attorney. This was cobbled together from a couple attorneys. This is on page 1. What I've done is I've taken the request and I put in some of these statements from attorneys. And one of the things they've said, several of them said, was if we could have somewhat of a consistent response. And I know everybody has different situations, but if our response can be somewhat consistent, that would be helpful. So here's a statement of basic parameters. Districts are not obligated to create a record that, according to state law, that doesn't exist. In response to, you're not obligated to create a record in response to a public records request. If the district does not maintain a legally disclosable document that qualifies as a public record, but your contracts are a public record, they are legally disclosable, so you can't deny your contracts. It's just, you know, that's the way it is. Then the district can respond that it does not maintain any legally disclosable public records within the scope of the request. It is also worth noting the district is not obligated to provide records which are available on its website. So you can instead direct the requester to the web address where the record is located. With that said, the district does have an obligation to perform a good faith search of its records to determine if in fact it does not in fact have any legally disclosable records. In other words, several attorneys said this: a blanket denial will not suffice. And Lily told me when I met with her that 2 or 3 districts had basically just said, hell no, we're not doing this. And I said, what did you do? And she said, then our legal department made a personal call to those districts and they did then decide they would respond. So blanket denial isn't going to cut it. She said that we had a cordial enough meeting for about an hour on Friday. She said they received a couple of dozen responses only so far. And I stressed to her that especially smaller districts, they have maybe 2 or 3 chief executive officer types of people only, that this is a huge burden and they can't expect an immediate response, and that it would likely be 6 to 8 weeks at a minimum from smaller rural districts. And so don't expect anything for a while. And the subtext of that message is, for most of us, you're not getting anything till the legislative session is over. Now, I did not say that, but that was my thought process. You're not getting all this information till the legislature has gone sine die, because we don't want anything crazier than what's already going on. And you know, if a story breaks worse than the ones that are already broken, those guys will go, those gentlemen and ladies will feel obliged to do something bad. I'm among friends, I can just say it like it is, right? Okay, so one attorney said, who talked to Lily, several attorneys did call her and talk to her. And one of them said, most notably, this doesn't sound incredibly time sensitive, so she is looking to get information in a month or two. That was the impression that I got from her, that she would rather have complete and accurate information than something really quickly.
Did she identify what it was for other than a database?
She said, we're seeking truth from power. No, she sees this as a noble endeavor. She sees this as a crusader for truth. And she said, if she gets odd information from districts that seems out of the norm, if bonuses or performance pay or spiking of pay, and she sees unusual things, they will be going directly to those districts, especially to write a story. I said, are you looking to publicly disclose a lot of this information? And she said, absolutely. So my take from that is superintendent salaries especially, and compensation and benefits and bonuses, whether performance pay or otherwise, are going to, she didn't say this, but my feeling is they are going to be disclosed to the press. And you might as well get used to that idea that, you know, we've always known it's a public records, but my feeling from her is those are going to be disclosed in the Republic, and certainly then probably in other places. Lupita?
So, Arizona School Boards Association does a great job gathering that information every year. Couldn't we send the report from ASBA to them?
I think she got that already.
She's looking probably for more specific information. And I know this is Arizona, not Illinois, but there was a law that passed in Illinois where all of that information that they're requesting is on a website. Any school district in Illinois, 863, you can go to any of them. And what it has done is taken you don't get those requests anymore because it's right there. So what are you gonna do about it? It is what it is. Those are legal documents and the information has been made public to everyone. We don't, you know, it kind of took all of that stress off of school districts and superintendents about their contracts and things of that nature, because just like Illinois, I'm sure Arizona thinks that they can balance districts' budgets on your back, but that's not gonna happen.
Just a quick question, I don't know Illinois law, did the charters also have to pony up for their CEOs, CFOs, and others like that?
And no, it wasn't part of the charter, you know, we don't have terms like that here. And if that's the case, then it should be, you know, share life. But we don't have the number of charters in Illinois that's a.
Did Lily indicate that she would stick with the charter CEOs, CFOs, you know,
They're really interested in the charters.
So they're included.
Yeah, they are definitely included. She said the charters, that she figured it would be very difficult to get it from the charters, but she said, we've been dogged in our pursuit of the charters.
So the basics are-
Yes, you have.
Did she say she
They
was gonna
have.
be sending another request out that's more specified or not?
No, I think she feels that like a file of all district employee base salaries and all other forms of compensation. I mean, that's.
Didn't we get a request like a year and a half ago from, okay.
It was from Ricardo Cano,
Ricardo
yep,
Cano.
Cano.
Yeah.
And at that time, I called him up and talked to him and said, are you sure you want to do a fishing expedition like this? I said, you've got really good relations with everybody. This could really damage it. And he said he would rethink it and
Most of us sent it.
Yeah.
Sent your contracts. You sent your.
but I said, you really need to think about what kind of a follow-up story you do on that. And he didn't really follow up.
No,
I never saw another word.
Mark, from, when you got a job out of state.
Yeah.
From legal, talk to all these attorneys, do you think the teeth could be to get the CEOs, CFOs in charge to pony up? Because obviously, you know, we're all gonna be doing this, as you said, put it together, try to have a similar format, all that type of stuff. But if some of the charters we've heard incredible numbers on could also be a part of this, then it gives cover, for lack of better words. I mean, otherwise, it's just gonna be the district, public school districts, and then nothing out there for legacy basis, Great Hearts, and others that are large. You know, so.
I do want to say something that was, you know how every attorney has a little bit different opinion and interpretation. Our attorney, and many of you use Udall Shumway, I'm sure everyone has a different opinion. When they said you have to give your contract, you do not have, our attorney told us this, you do not have to give your entire contract. And I would just strongly suggest you do not do that. You only have to give your base salary and other forms of compensation. So be very careful. I just want to,
You don't have to say, she's not really asking for the contract.
So don't copy your entire salary your entire contract and send it. I think one district does that.
No, and then you're producing a record really too. I mean,
In other districts, other people will be, well, this district did
Are they
it, so why,
they're
just
wanting
give your base.
a section out of the contract, or are they
no,
just wanting?
here's
a
what she
specific
says,
amount?
a file of all district employee base salaries and all other forms of compensation includes but not limited to bonuses, incentive pay, and by that she means performance pay, vacation and sick leave buyback, stipends, car and phone allowances. So she wants to know not just your salary, but you get car allowances, you get phone allowances, annuities. She's done her homework here because she knows how sometimes the superintendent's salary is one thing, but then you add in your annuity, your car allowance, your phone allowance, other forms of compensation.
Forms of payment.
She doesn't specify that, so I would just really, really be careful what you give.
No.
And
But
what
all
individual-
forms of compensation, basically.
Well, my question was, is she asking for forms of compensation or dollar amounts of compensation?
Doesn't specify that.
Well, here's what she said, what some people have said. She said the position and pay report, if you have visions, she said the position and pay report that iVisions produces is sufficient.
The debate we're having in our shop is, it's in the computer, but we've never hit enter. As soon as we hit enter, then we're producing a report. So if I've given a report to the board or it's on my website or et cetera, it's already printed in space somewhere, that I can give them that. But for me to go and make all this stuff, go find it, put it in a chart, I've never handed it to the board, so I'm not making a new record. I'm not gonna do it. And so I'll just tell you where to go on my website and give you that kind of stuff. But if I have to produce, all this stuff, especially if you're a small school, small rural school, it's gonna take somebody weeks to put this all together. So don't do it.
Redacting information is interesting.
Yeah,
We
don't
just
do
said
it.
all that, does that include social
No,
security?
not social security, but name
So
of
if you-
teacher,
You've handed a board
name of
report,
bus
you need to
driver.
redact it.
name of principal, and if they get performance pay bonuses.
And not every district received this.
I haven't
They
received
did.
it.
Miranda
You
didn't receive it.
you are
No.
I'll give them your name.
No. So
Thank you,
I
Ed.
think
No,
there's-
wow, they must have somehow missed it then, because I was down in Rio Rico the other day and I talked to many districts down there, and every different district I talked to received it.
Yeah, they missed a couple. Don't tell them.
No, we won't,
I'm not.
we won't rat out any of it.
I wouldn't put it in the form they want either.
Yeah, no.
Give them 87 documents.
Yeah,
It's all
no.
in the soup.
And if you do send them an electronic thing, and I included this at the end, all electronics files should be sent in a PDF format.
Yeah.
Don't send them a nice Excel spreadsheet that has embedded formulas that work. Put it into a PDF that's inert. Or better yet, copy it, charge them for the copies, and send them a paper copy that's not useful for, that they have to re-enter. Or direct them, even better, direct them to say, the last 10 board meetings included the pay, all these people we hired and their salaries, so here's the URL for all these different board meetings. Or send them, here's the salary schedule, here's the stipends. The problem with just sending the salary schedule That's not a totally responsive thing because it doesn't say who was hired at which salary. But sending stipends, coaches' salaries, but they really want to know who's, you know,
Mark, who are they after? Are they after superintendent salaries? Is that what they're
everybody.
after?
No,
Trying to create a database.
Looks like a cabinet.
I mean, think about this, with the universities, I'm just saying this is something that's making me wonder. With the universities, when they did this, they started with the presidents, but what did they end up doing? They ended up publishing a database that had every employee of the state universities, down to the instructors, everybody, and what was in that database, you could look up. Because I looked up some of my friends who teach in the universities and you could see their salaries. That was put out in great detail. Both administrators, professors, everybody. I don't know if that's what they will do.
So we have two people, Paul and then Sheila.
So again, I come back to the question I started with, so do you think based on what you're hearing from the legal that charters will have to produce as well?
How can they make them?
Well, they've asked for them.
Yeah.
Charter's not producing it. I asked a couple lawyers, Charter's not producing it. Is that a reason we can deny it? And they said, denial by one district or charter is not legally defensible for us to deny it. In other words, for Steve to say, I'm not going to give it because Jeff didn't, that's not defensible. Now, if we all said we wouldn't do it, I don't know what would happen. If they have enough legal resources to do that, a massive denial. But what are we trying to hide? That would be the question.
It's not creating a bunch of work.
It's the labor. There's nothing to hide. Just from experience. First of all, what are they gonna do with the information? Second of all, you never apologize for the money you make because it's not enough. You work too hard for what you receive and it's not enough. You should be very proud of the work that you've done and you shouldn't have to apologize and not be afraid to share. And once it got out there, you didn't hear from it anymore. Now they're looking for something else to ding you on or sing you on. But this is not. This is something that you don't really have to stress out about because what are they gonna say? You get paid too much money? I doubt that because no one does. Not for the work that you do. You should be very proud and never apologize. Never apologize.
That's a very good point.
Sorry.
No, I appreciate that. One question came in online regarding performance pay. Is it what was possible or what was actually earned? This is what was actually earned, not what was possible, but what was actually paid to you. If you're asking for iVisions, that's not a possibility. That's what was paid.
Speaking of what was actually paid, she's asking for FY 2020. No one has been paid out.
No.
Good point. That's
Previous
why,
years.
That's why I wanted to say though, what also was told to me, and I don't know if it's accurate or not, is that our attorney met with her and said, hey, ask some questions about what are you getting? What are you trying to get at? And that what they told us was that another request, a more accurate request, was going to be coming. Like that was a big mistake that you can't request in the future, so that a different kind of public request was headed our way.
Yeah, a couple other things here, by the way, too. Amount spent per pupil per school year. She's withdrawing that because you can just simply say that's available on the Auditor General's report. That will suffice. Don't worry about that. That's on the middle of page 2, where it says amount spent per pupil. That's the 4th bullet. And she's withdrawing this request. And the number of assaults on staff by students per school from school year 17, 18, 19, and 19, 20. Of course, 19, 20 is still going on. And she said she knows most of us don't have a specific record of that. If you have an idea of the number of assaults on staff, you could simply say 2 or 3 or whatever. You could just simply give a number.
Zero. We do a safety report 80 every year. That's what Paul Ty actually sent her towards. He actually said to go to the
AZ Safe? But that doesn't always, the thing with, I mean, it's somewhat responsive because it lists assaults, but it doesn't say who the victim of the assault is.
What would the other record be?
There isn't one. That's why you don't have to,
No.
that's why you don't have to do it.
Don't our payroll vouchers, like, you're not have to? Payroll vouchers.
Oh, yeah.
Why is that not a record?
What's a record?
Payroll voucher. She'd have to go through and do the math on it.
So what would you send her in terms of payroll vouchers?
Right. The board, the consent agenda. And
No.
then she'd have to go
No,
through.
that would be,
It's not my problem.
no, that would be responsive. It would be. The payroll vouchers would be responsive.
So that would take care of that first one then?
This would be helpful on talking points as well. I know that we're trying to have the oral conversation, but some of the stuff we're saying, what's everybody's gonna try to do would be nice. As you said when we began this, we wanna try to align this.
I mean, that's what staff is already doing, which generates a record, which goes to be reviewed by the board, is available. And then we have to go make.
And you should make sure that they are actually on your website and in the minutes before you make that record.
Before the board approves them.
Yeah.
That's why I think
Because
every individual.
when I've looked at some boards' minutes, that detailed stack of payroll vouchers is not actually up online. In some boards, I pulled up a few to look and see, and I don't see detailed.
Can we get a technical, legal, talking point as far as just, you know?
I put some of this in here. Some attorneys I've talked to said, that's why our clients call us to get that and pay for that. They work for a living, so. So if you want that.
Is there someone we could hire collectively though? Is there someone that we as a group, could ASA, if we had to pay a fee, that we get, I mean, I'd sure like to have some unanimity or some.
All these lawyers are talking on, they have a website, they have a, what would I call it? A group. They interact as a group, so they let me see some of it. They're remarkably similar. So if you talk to, most of you have legal insurance, talk to your lawyer. What you're gonna get from them is, it's all remarkably similar what they're saying. Finally, if you look on the last page, where she says, what she said was she wants this promptly. If you look on the very last page, in response to the paragraph on being prompt, and he says that this couple lawyers said this, it's not obligated to respond within as soon as possible. You're only legally required to respond to promptly. The determination of the promptly timeline varies depending on the scope of the request, the need for redaction, because if you send a payroll list, there's some redacting of Social Security and other numbers, and the volume of records sought. Given the scope of this request, I think the response time, which could be considered prompt, is going to vary from a month to potentially 3 months, depending, and I had this discussion with Lily. I said, small rural districts without a huge payroll staff, for example, it's going to take them longer than a larger district that might have staff dedicated with very narrow job responsibilities. Then if you want to charge for copies, refer to your policy that talks about that. If you don't normally charge, you can't charge for this. Stick to your board policy. If you charge for electronic copies, and some people do, but again, don't do it unless it's in your board policy. And there's some language there to use. If you do charge for copies, send the response back saying, we charge for these, here's the charge. As soon as you have remitted that fee to us, then we will send you these things. But we get the money first before you get it. And there's some language there that you can, suggested language.
There's 50 of us here, there's 200 that's not here. So how are you gonna get this out to everybody so we are the same?
I can send this to people electronically. And again, this is compiled from various lawyers. You should talk to your lawyers, but this gives you an idea. And if we all approach this somewhat similarly, it can't be ducked. That's sort of the bottom line of this. And again, Dr. Harrison Williams, I think, makes a very good point. Teachers work incredibly hard. They don't make enough money. A lot of this will show that teachers are underpaid. A lot of this will show you run multi-million-dollar corporations. You supervise building projects. You supervise hundreds, if not thousands, of employees. If you're in the private sector,
Mark, sometimes we
you
get
would be
benefits.
making, you would,
Sometimes we get benefits too.
yeah, you would be making in the 7 figures, not in the very low 6 figures. So this will show that people are underpaid.
Can we charge for the time?
No, you may not charge for the time unless you have a board policies that says that, but I doubt that you do. I don't think I think it's specifically forbidden to charge for the time.
Mark, I appreciated the Mace article, it was 2 days ago, I think it was, where, I mean, she had clearly done her homework. She had read the ASA survey, which I thought was helpful because she pointed out that Arizona is much lower. I just think if we do get to the point where there's enough districts and all that type of thing, we probably gonna need a statement from ASA on the fact of what the true reality is, especially those who go to ASA. You know, that we, comparatively speaking, I know that there are some states, as you and I talked, but there are so many states, including where my friend Sheila comes from, Illinois and Texas and other places where we are well under the market, so.
One other thing I should bring up, I talked to Chuck Essex a lot about this and Annabelle Apricella. And Annabelle suggested this, you know, and I don't know what you think about this suggestion. She said, if you're responding to this request and wanted to send things electronically that you're sending to the Republic, to her, she would compile a database and look through it and say, here's the things that are going to stand out that we're going to be attacked about. And let's prepare what we're going to say in advance, especially in terms of administrative pay. Here's some things that maybe stand out that we should be prepared to defend. And maybe sometimes the best defense then is a good offense.
Well, what they're going to do is try to compare our salaries to our teachers' salaries. And we all know our teachers don't make enough money.
No.
But that's what they're gonna do.
No, but there are some ratios in the ASA survey that says at certain levels, like superintendent actually make like 5.5 to the average teacher salary, which assuming you're in that range, you'd actually be well in the range.
But she's gonna leave that for now.
No, but then we could be, this would allow us to prepare a response in advance. I don't know what you all think of that. If you would be comfortable with Anna, who's a whiz with things, I offer that out to you. If you think it would be helpful to have someone do some analysis ahead of time, and then we could think about, okay, here's what the analysis might show and where we might think about how we're going to respond.
I think context is important in anticipating a bias reporting of context. That does follow our professional organizations, so school board, ASA, ASBO together, for instance, in national context, not just in dollars but in ratios. That exists. I don't think I can make 5.5. I think one of the things is a lot of incentives and separation pays aren't paid in the fiscal year. A lot of us year, some of our performance funds in the following fiscal year, not fiscal year return. I mean, and probably other people could add to that list of things that, you know, are in place for a reason that wouldn't make sense to anybody who didn't have a sense of context. So it's gonna, I mean, it's not straightforward necessarily, and it'd be easy to misinterpret.
There's a lot of data that needs to be pulled into the conversation.
The fiscal year 20, that's a good one. I didn't even realize that.
Now, I can check with Lily in terms of what you said, Christy, if there's going to be a follow-up clearer request.
Yeah, well, I think there's already parts of it started when she's really brand new to this whole process. We all know that. And so she's already started to amend the original.
Yeah.
And so I don't think she even knows that.
We could ask for an amended request,
No.
which would,
No, just leave it alone, because I think I don't.
well, that buys more time.
Well, we want to do a ton of work on this, to find out what that was.
No.
I think just,
I can't walk down the hall and grab this record out of the file cabinet.
No.
it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's just,
So after that, something has to be generated to make the evidence.
Is it electronic record, still a record? You have it in your computer.
Yeah. The big ask is to start working on the payroll record. I mean, that's the one. Oh, the other one I wanted to emphasize, one other one. The top of page 2. The top of page 2, this is the other ask that was big. Right at the top of page 2. Any documents showing employee years of experience in the district and total years of experience.
SCDR?
Yep. The SDER, which is the SADR, the School District Employee Report annually submitted to ADE, is likely responsive to this request. So we suggest you contact the Department of Ed, where we have submitted the annual SDER school district, which we hate that report, but now we're happy that we've done it.
good point.
There's that report. We've done it. We've given it to ADE. It's a public record. Go get it.
I don't think it's
Sick 'em.
information so much as the work. I mean, this is work, we have work that's been done.
So that's a response to that one. We should all give that same response. SDER, go get it. Fetch.
That's the bullet point I think Paul is really asking for is, for each piece, what can we say, this 40% is
Yep.
obtainable in this general area? And then for wherever the shifty stuff is, and I don't mean shifty like mistrusted, I mean the way we each report it. And then, yeah, we just need some guidance on.
That's a good idea.
And that's what we've kind of attempted to do here.
Laura, did you have, a rubric that everyone followed to say, okay, this is how we're going to respond to, okay, this is in the SDR report, this is in the board document, this is in. Was there a rubric that everyone followed, therefore there was uniformity onto what was submitted by every district?
Yes.
Yes, rubric?
Exactly what she's asking. That was what we turned in. That's
No,
what
I
we
mean,
turned in.
not what.
No, she said they have a website that shows everything in Illinois, that's how they.
Everything that she's requesting here is on your school district website. Including my contract is online, it's public, out there, just Google me, all the information is out there. So so all of this information this document was created by the business manager, and we had to put it out there in October of the school year. For example, right now, you would only see 18, 19. So 19, 20,
I think we've beaten
I
this
think
dead.
you guys are Illinois is a
Yeah.
lot further down the line than Arizona. There's reporting transparency and accountability for both charters.
Yeah, go ahead.
So it's a
You want the
balance.
electronic?
Let's not get too far down. I agree with you that we don't have anything to hide, but Arizona
I'm gonna be here
takes
all day.
every bit of an opportunity to say, you guys make way too much money.
2 more.
Or, I mean, another thing for
Just
context,
be
when they
careful
voted
about that.
stupid performance pay through the legislature, we opposed it. I mean, the only reason we have it is because, they made it a bill.
The other point is, like we're doing with the lawsuit, Kathy Connect is the citizen. If Lily does not get traction from the charters, we may want to look at somebody who can continue to pursue, not through this organization, but, Kathy Connect is a parent or a citizen on that lawsuit. So something to think about is for someone to finally pursue that, because I have a funny feeling that if Joe Q Public saw, at least some of the numbers we're seeing coming out of 2.3 million, 21 million, 8.8 million, that this would be context matters, as Roger said, that, we're making our low 100,000s or 200,000s, whatever it is, and then also you got people making total comp of 8 million. The game is off.
Yeah.
Charter.
Okay, should we
Yeah.
go to the
Okay,
bathroom?
we have to stop the,
One more.
you've got one more, So we could go on all day. Good conversation. I do think that Superintendent Lewis, your idea of trying to get, and come on up because we have one more agenda item. I do want to just shout out, I think that's a great idea to kind of get some talking points. So we'll work with Mark on that, just to kind of close the loop on the ever popular public records request. But this is your time with Passion and Courage to help me out here with our superintendent. That for those of you that are new to this meeting, we do a Passion and Courage that we identify someone who will take the Passion and Courage every time we come together. And the criteria for that is we come together and we try to identify someone who has represented characteristics of someone that has just had to face a courageous battle. And so Donna started the award when she was president of the division. And I asked her to come up and do it because she really did start the award. But this person has had to kind of overcome some things in taking on his superintendency. And I'm going to let Dr. Lewis talk a little bit about that.
Well, before we do that, how many people went to San Diego? What, hands way high. And did we see Christy just do a great job? She took the gavel. And so we're very proud of you. And we didn't acknowledge that formally, but it officially began in San Diego.
Thank you.
So talk about being a bastion of courage. Thank you for taking Arizona right again to the national level. Really, really appreciate that about you. And Mike Pensett is the superintendent in Flagstaff. And remember, he shared with us the ransomware story. And I mean, gosh, we were all sort of jittery about that one. So we all have these jittery, funny requests that are constantly pulling and pushing on us as far as the stress of how much distraction do we have. Well, our bastion of courage today jumped into the fire with both feet. It was a choice. So we're not all victims all the time. But I'd like to invite Dennis Goodwin to come up from Murphy. Mike wished he could be here, but he came over to my house last night and delivered this and was really excited to say this is well earned, the bastion of courage that goes to our dear friend from Murphy. And I'd like him to share a few stories about the things that he inherited and what he's choosing to overcome. And then I want somebody to do a picture from it because I want to send it to you.
I think I was a coach, so I think everybody can hear me. This thing is significant.
It's well, you have to put it on.
No.
Has it been wiped down? Oh, sure.
Never been wiped down. No, we're gonna actually, yeah.
Coronavirus. Coronavirus.
Tell us your story first.
Just saying. Not that we're paranoid.
Sorry.
Paparazzi.
We're so glad you're here. Thank you. Share some.
Voluntarily, I think it's just a surprise to the magnitude of what it was actually going to be like. I was very fortunate to have 5 of my staff come with me. And that also, when I stole the business manager, a crotchety old son of a gun from Lupita, I don't think she's all that upset about that. You know, he's a challenge, and I've only had to yell him a couple times. You know, my grandparent graduated from Murphy. I graduated from Murphy, and I've actually run into this out of state. And it's just been amazing to me, you know, the passion that we have. So many people. These people were going through a treatment that you would have never believed. The staff, that they were unimportant, they were abused, they were victims of an environment that was very, very selfish for one person. When they took over receivership, they were forecasted about $2.9 million in debt, and our budget's about $9.5 million. So that's not a lot of room to work with. And the receiver told me I had to cut $800,000 the first year. We ended up cutting $1.2 million. We'll be out of debt this June. We have added new ELA and math curriculum. We put together community committee that actually comes to me and shares me their frustrations and difficulties. I have a teacher advisory committee. My favorite committee is my student advisory one. And he put a bunch of 8th graders in a room and gave them pizza. It's amazing what can happen. You know, at the event on Saturday, I have to say, we had a lot of people that want to come back to Murphy. And so to me, that says a lot. I was not expecting this.
I'm loving it.
You got to be passionate for our jobs. I mean, you were talking about the salaries. Nothing personal, guys, but my salary was done by the receiver. I don't have a bonus. I hardly have anything in my contract. So trust me, they're not going to even talk to me at the newspaper. My wife bought a T-shirt for me about half a year into Murphy. It said superintendent, because there is no, what is it? You probably have seen it. Frickin' job description of miracle worker is not possible. And that's what we do every single day. I love when you have a plan of what you're going to accomplish that day. At the end of the day, you're going, I didn't do anything on my list because all you did is fight fires. But is there a better job? I have never had one. I start at 7 a.m. with my Algebra 1 kids, and that's actually my favorite part of the day. I teach Algebra 1 because I'm a math certified teacher. And I get an hour of kids, and I absolutely love spending my time. No, I won't come teach math in your district. I would love to. I pay my taxes there. Is that okay? But you know, I really am blessed and fortunate. GCU is coming around major for us. Jennifer's being a huge benefit to us. In fact, Wednesday we're doing our 5th round of strategic planning. We've already approved social studies for next year curriculum. So, you know, we're getting there. I'm hoping that in the next couple of years, we continue to progress like we are. And so I appreciate this. This means a lot. So yes, and if one of you could send me that picture, I know my wife would love to see a picture of that. So thank you all.
And then if I may, I'm working with a superintendent right now in Oregon. This is her first year, and she's not everything. So she probably gets every one of those in Oregon. But one of the things she's going through right now, she's the very first superintendent that has a staff member that has a coronavirus. So she's sharing all her information, and so is another colleague from Washington State. So I can send it to Mark, and then Mark can send it out. I mean, it's a lot. She's going through boundary changes that happened before she came. This is her first year. Transgender bathroom issues, bad issues gone wrong, and now the coronavirus happens. Your thoughts?
My granddaughter is in Washington State, and they're out of school today because they believe tested positive for it. So they closed the entire school for one teacher. So that's the state of Washington. Near the Seattle area, near Edmond.
It really does fit on the head.
Well, that's okay. Do I have volunteers?
No. Whatever. They made us all wear it previously.
Oh, wow.
It's probably very true.
Okay, you all attend today. Go read at your schools, and we will see you at our next upcoming conference. Thank you all.
We had heard before that 5% that we were getting, they were only going to give us 3% for M&O and 2%. Is that still going to happen?
Yeah, well, depending on what Lucy's final budget.
Try to look over this tomorrow. My colleagues. We're meeting at your